Welcome. We get to stay in my favorite city a little while longer. DJ Meow Mix, hit me with some G-Town Philly. Oh yeah, back again. Philly's St. Patty's Day parade is infamous and messy. The streets smell of beer and other yellowish fluids. The outdoors impressively as dank as a frat house basement. It's time to move on. Let's head to another bastion of good food and drink in the city, Germantown. You can feel it in the air. This place has history, haunted history, a headquarters for the epic battles of Brandywine and Paoli, and host to its own battle during the Revolutionary War. It was also a place to hide from the yellow fever running rampant in the city in the early 1800s. Hey, quiet on the set. The suburb of Germantown grew as the inner city expanded outward. Today it is only a portion of a sprawling city, but the neighborhood maintains unique cultural and historical significance. It is also home to high strangeness, and that is what we're here for. It has long resided on Germantown Avenue. Down the street from the Benjamin Chew House, which is still riddled with holes for musket shot and famous for its blood portrait, is a house of similar style from the same era with an equally bloody history. Built by John Wister in 1744, it was a summer home, a permanent residence, and was even occupied by British soldiers during the American Revolution. It has also been the permanent haunt for some notable ghosts. The building's name is equally as odd as its history, Grumblethorpe. Walking off the streets that recently gave birth to words like John and where turn signals have been replaced by glares, we cross the threshold into a building that at first feels very updated inside. An epicenter for horticulture and historical reenactments, education is the main purpose of Grumblethorpe today. However, some things have been left as they were during historically significant moments in time. Stepping into the parlor of the house that had been occupied by British soldiers in the days surrounding the Battle of Germantown is like stepping back into that time period. A wooden floor of a style we no longer see, abandoned for better flooring methods, still bears the faded bloodstain where James Agnew slowly bled to his death. Furniture from the era adds to the feeling of antiquity. The room smells faintly of baking bread, delicious and comforting. Its warmth an invitation to sit down and shake off the chilled weather that followed you inside. Staring at the stain, contemplating the scene that played out here in 1777, movement catches the eye, just at the very edge. A shadow, appearing to wear a basic dress commonly worn by a housemaid in the 18th century, is mingling casually. A quick scan of the room verifies it's only us, the extra shadow attached to no one. The temperature drops suddenly. Lousy smarch weather. Is that a moan, or the old house creaking? Eyes finding their way back to the stain, you can see why history buffs travel from afar to see it. Your senses describe it as a smudge. It looks like someone tried too hard to clean up wine that had spilled the night before. But it has power, weight. As you stare, a dark fog seeps out of the floorboards and rises to about knee level. It brushes past, causing the hairs on the neck to jump to attention with nervous excitement. The mist exits through a doorway, disappearing instantly. Clearly not thinking this through, my brain comes to the conclusion a step behind my feet. We have to follow Spirit Agnew. As we emerge out of the doorway, my first thought was a typical door usage question. Now, what did I come in here for? That's quickly overshadowed by the fact that we're floating, apparently taking the ethereal form of the spirit we were chasing. From our vantage point, we can easily see Agnew and his small faction of soldiers marching through an undeveloped East Falls toward Germantown. Sir William Howe, the British general, had a successful string of outmaneuvering the American forces and exploiting their lack of scouting in the area. The British currently own these roads. They had been running the mean streets of Philly for weeks. After suffering devastating losses recently at Brandywine Creek, as well as the morale-killing embarrassment at Paoli, American revolutionary forces were attempting to take back Germantown on this day, October 4th, 1777. Agnew is fashionably late to the party, strolling up toward the end of a day filled with intense and confused fighting. The British made a successful stand, keeping the revolutionary forces at bay and continuing its occupation of Germantown and ultimately Philadelphia. To be fair, the American forces weren't exactly expecting Agnew's entourage. The squad saunters around a bend in the road, reaching the edge of the city, and literally runs into a battalion of 100 plus American soldiers. Surprised and properly miffed over the death of their fellow soldiers, they open fire. And at such a close distance, the muskets are able to do their work, hitting Brits caught loading or retreating. Agnew is of the latter, hit in the back while fleeing. Through the second volley of musket fire, Andrew, his faithful servant, is able to find Agnew and get him out of Dodge. Quoting a letter from Andrew to the late general's wife, "The fateful ball entered the small of his back, near the seam of his coat, right side, and came out a little below his left breast. Another ball went through and out his right hand. I, at the same moment, received a slight wound in the side, but just got off time enough to prevent his falling, who, with the assistance of 2 men, took him down, carried him to a house, and laid him on a bed, sent for the doctor, who was near. When he came, he could only turn his eyes, and look steadfastly on me with seeming affection. The doctor and Major Leslie just came in time enough to see him depart this life, which he did without the least struggle or agony, but with great composure and calmness and seeming satisfaction, which was about 10 or 15 minutes after he received the ball, and I believe between 10 and 11 o'clock." Unquote. Despite Andrew and others' best efforts to save him, Brigadier General James Agnew's life seeped out of him, pooling on the parlor floor. Once a colonizer, his spirit remains in a land he failed to conquer, finding a permanent home at 5267 Germantown Ave. A less tormented and non-threatening entity is the ghost of Justina. Orphaned when her father succumbed to yellow fever, she was taken in by the Whisters. Part housemaid, part family, and in life and death, she remained a friendly presence in the house. Her favorite pastime was baking bread on Friday evenings, which she handed out to the poor on Saturday mornings. One night in 1820, John Wister's daughters reported seeing Justina in their bedroom. Exceptionally odd, as she was tending to another of their properties on Market Street. The Wisters found out the following morning that she had passed in the middle of the night. Cause of death was the same as her father's, and many Philly residents that year, yellow fever. Her ghost is at home cohabitating with the staff of Grumblethorpe to this day, and is seen by many children who visit. Most Friday nights at sundown, she reportedly begins the process of baking her bread for the downtrodden, the pleasant aroma permeating the entire house. Her determined charitable spirit is an inspiration. The world could use more ghosts like her. John Wister, a wine merchant, built Grumblethorpe in 1744. It was initially a summer home, a way to escape the city they toiled in the rest of the year. Eventually pushed persuasively out of the inner city by an epidemic, the family made it their permanent residence in 1793. By that time, they had a few other properties, and luckily could be in a different residence when the house was occupied by Agnew and his British forces in 1777. Wister was a fan of horticulture and is responsible for bringing some species to America. Wisteria was supposedly named after him, paying homage to this. The house itself is home to a botanical wonder that has spanned the ages and is alive and well today. A ginkgo tree said to have come as a seedling from Europe in 1754. Ginkgo biloba is a living fossil, one of the oldest tree species on the planet, that can live up to 3,000 years. It is also one of the oldest transgender organisms found on Earth, with the documented ability to change and express more than one gender. Ginkgo trees produce pungent berries that drop from female plants and contain a seed with a soft, savory center. This seed has long been foraged around the city for cultural recipes. It's more than likely that all of these trees in the city came from one source, John Wister's ginkgo tree, as it is the oldest of its kind in America. I'd like to thank a friend of mine, Allison Schell, whose expertise I leaned on heavily to fill in some gaps and add detail to my limited Revolutionary War knowledge for the episode. Much appreciated. Thanks, as always, to DJ Meow Mix and Dr. Ocular Pat Down Dunks, my steadfast collaborators. But also to Loki. Keep it down in there, I'm trying to sleep in my shark house. G, and his barely perceptible patience for my existence.